All right, Chapter 18, Subdivision and Developments. In this chapter, we're going to describe the various methods of developing and subdividing land. We're going to identify the impacts of environmental regulations and other laws on the sales, health, and safety, and building regulations. So let's start off with developing and subdividing land. Let me see if I got my notes prepared for Chapter 18. I do. And
She
so
lost connection again.
she lost it again. Yeah, yeah. I think that chapter 19 will be saving for tomorrow then. So yeah, developing and subdividing land. So it starts with assemblage. Assemblage is now. hmm, I don't want to tell you not to study these things, but I doubt you're getting questions on these on assemblage. But assemblage is when you combine two or more smaller lots into one, making it a larger lot. And then that increase in value is known as plottage value. A subdivider is someone who buys undeveloped acreage and then divides it into smaller lots for the sale to individuals or developers that it's ready to be built on now. Sometimes that could be the subdivider themselves can be the builder. So it could be for the subdivider's own use. But subdividers also are experts at dealing with all the legal requirements, the land surveying, environmental regulations, etc., that are required to subdivide the land and then prepare it for building. They get all the approvals for that. A developer is the one that builds the homes or other buildings on the lots and sells them. And sometimes a subdivider can be a builder. Let me add that in there. Sometimes a subdivider can be a builder as well. So otherwise, a subdivider buys undeveloped acreage, divides into smaller lots for sale to individuals or developers, or the subdivider's own use. After getting after doing everything that is required to prepare the land for development. There we go. There, that's more comprehensive. So, developing and subdividing in New Jersey, when a second lot is sold off of a larger parcel, the development is classified as a subdivision. And the state of New Jersey allows municipalities to determine what they would classify as a major subdivision, which would require a public hearing, and what it constitutes a minor subdivision, which would not, before they do any subdividing or development. So minor subdivisions, maybe one or two lots, do not require new streets or off-site improvements or public hearings for approval. Major subdivisions requires public hearings to get the approval. They have a lot more issues to address, and they must give the public an opportunity to pose questions about how that project would affect the community. So some examples of issues for the larger subdivisions would be the roads, making roads, the additional traffic, the burden on the local school districts, especially if it's a big subdivision where you have many, many homes many children. This would have an impact on the school districts, the public works service, emergency service like police, fire, waste removal, water and sewage treatment, and drainage and environmental impact are all issues that must be addressed when getting approvals for a major subdivision. So planning precedes actual subdivision process, the subdividing process. You know, you got to plan on how you're going to use the land before you actually divide it up, right? You don't just start dividing the land. You got to see how are we gonna actually use it, and it needs to be in compliance with the local master plan of that community. So the planning boards and planning commissioners need to be consulted. Dedication, the term dedication, add that to your definition list. It's giving land to the government for a public use like streets, schools, and parks. In part of the land planning, they have to make sure that there's going to be bonding to ensure that the sewers and street costs are going to be paid for, as well as compliance with zoning ordinances governing the use and lot sizes, fire and safety ordinances, and building and construction codes. And sometimes they need to get a percolation test, sometimes referred to as a PERC test for short. That you need to know. That's always going to be on exam. You need to know, they're either going to refer to it as a PERC test or a percolation test. It is a test of how well soil absorbs liquids for drainage, for runoff, and for septic systems to see how well the soil can hold the capacity of water and absorb it. If it doesn't absorb water very well, because it has a high clay content in the land, that could be an issue. That could be a major issue. I'm going to show you in the next slide or two how a percolation test actually gets done from a segment of This Old House. You know, Bob Vila and This Old House. So let's just highlight first dedication of land for streets, schools, and parks. This is giving land to the government. And a PERC test or percolation test is a test of this soil's absorption and drainage capacity.
And I have it.
Okay. So here is that Bob Vila's This Old House, showing you how percolation tests will work.
One of the first things to consider when building a house like this out in the country is a septic plan. What to do with the waste and water that needs to leave that building. Now, it needs to go into a septic system. There's a couple of key components to a septic system. One is a septic tank. Now, this tank will accept waste and water. Now, the solids will stay in the tank and be broken down over time by bacteria. But the water that'll pass through the tank will now go out through a leach field. Now, a leach field is a series of pipes, perforated pipes, that sit below the substrate of the soil, and the water will trickle or drip down through the ground. Now, to determine if you can even have a septic system, it starts with a PERC test. Brendan Zabricki's with the town of Essex. You've had your share of PERC tests, right?
I sure have.
So what's a PERC test?
Well, that stands for percolation test. and it's a field test to simulate how wastewater will travel down through the soil once a septic system is built on top of it.
How fast it'll pass through, sort of like water going down through the coffee grounds in a filter.
That's a good analogy, yes.
Right. Okay. So what have you done to get us to this point?
Well, previous to this, we dug several deep holes, about 10 feet down into the ground.
Okay.
That allowed us to get a look at the various soil layers that you're going to find whenever you dig here in New England.
All right, so this is topsoil. What are you seeing? What am I seeing?
Well, as you just mentioned, this is your topsoil. Then you go through a layer known as subsoil. You then finally get down to a layer that is really the glacial material. In other words, the glacier brought it in.
Yeah.
We have determined that this is the most restrictive or most limiting layer in the soil profile. And the septic system code requires that we actually perform the perk test in that most limiting
So
layer.
you're testing at almost the worst place.
The worst place that you're going to have underneath that system, that's
All right.
correct.
So that looks pretty dense right here, so not
That's
accept
right.
water too well.
That's exactly right. So what we did after that is, knowing what we had in the deep holes, we just had the machine dig down a shelf to the top of that most restrictive layer,
right.
and we're ready to dig a perk hole that's about 12 inches in diameter and about 18 inches deep.
Okay.
Then we're going to fill that hole with water and let the hole sit for a little while to make it saturated. That will be a great simulation of how soil will behave when it's wet underneath a leach facility. Then we will use a ruler to watch the rate at which the water drops down through the hole over time.
Yeah.
And that will give us what's called a perk rate, or percolation
So what
rate.
happens if the rate doesn't drop fast enough?
If it doesn't drop fast enough, that would be a limitation to the site that you may not be able to build a septic system in this particular
This is a pretty important
location.
test then.
It is very important. So now I'm just going to take this water, pour it into the hole against a board that I've already got set up.
What's the board do?
What this does is it puts the water into the hole more gently so that we do not stir up the fine material in there.
Yeah.
And we want to bring this water level up to about 12 inches, and we're going to maintain that level for about 15 minutes, again, to simulate saturated conditions in the soil.
Okay. Okay.
So we'll check that. We're about 9 so far, so we're going to need another bucket of water, Richard.
All right, Brennan, it has been 15 minutes.
We want to see the time it takes to go from 9 inches down to 6 inches. Well, it dropped down to 6 inches in about 27 minutes.
So is that good?
Yeah, I've seen quicker than that, but it's somewhere right in the middle.
But you're telling us that we passed the test, right?
Yes, absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you for your help on the perk test.
Of course.
Who would have thought the test would be that simple? Just dump a bucket of water in a hole and time how long it takes for the ground to absorb it. You know, hey, it's science, right? All right, so land planning issues. Some of the land planning issues. The subdivider seeks out raw land to profitably subdivide, determine if the proposed use is consistent with zoning, the local zoning ordinances, locate financial backers, and then they initiate their marketing strategies. So title to the individual parcels are transferred as lots are sold using a blanket mortgage, which has a partial release clause in it. Impact fees are paid to the municipality by a developer to help the community cope with the added demand and use of its services. Police, fire, schools, garbage, public works, water and sewage demands. Now, I found that lately, a lot of these communities that are developing and building up all over New Jersey, they're not even collecting impact fees from developers anymore. They're doing it some other way through some kind of other cockamamie political grant or program that the politicians put into place. I'm not exactly sure how that works. But this is the way that it always worked. They charge impact fees, and this other alternative that they got, it don't seem to be working too good because these developers seem to be getting tax breaks and not giving any money back. So these impact fees, though, I refer to them as legal bribes. These are the legal bribes that you need to give to the municipality that need to be negotiated with the municipality if you want to get your approvals for building the project. So the municipality sometimes can ask for a builder to donate a fire truck or a few police cars, or even have a school built, depending on the size of this project that's getting constructed. So sometimes they ask for a percentage of the sale of each unit be paid to the municipality so they could decide how the money is being used themselves. It really depends on the size of that, the size and nature of that construction project that they're doing. Let me just caught up on my notes here. Land planning, that's where I left off. Okay. Subdividing. So let's do the highlights now of, let's write this note here on page 341. Title to individual parcels of subdivided land is transferred as the lots are sold. We're right there using a blanket mortgage with a partial release clause. And then you can highlight impact fees down here.
And I have that.
Okay. So a blanket mortgage is a loan secured by more than one parcel. It's used to finance subdivision developments, and it has that partial release clause, which works like a modified alienation or due on sale clause in the note. Normally, when you sell or transfer the ownership of a property, the loan needs to be paid off in full. But this version of a modified alienation clause says that it's not due on sale. You could just pay it off as segments, parts of the land of the overall lot are sold off of the larger one. You pay it back in pieces. Like this as an example, if you remember this one. You have the, you use the blanket mortgage to purchase this property, and then you build the house on it, you sell off one lot off of the larger lot, then you pay back 1/6 of the loan. Okay, so that's an example of a, how that partial release clause would work. So this is a municipal tax map. It expresses the lot and block numbers. You can see every city block has a block number. It's usually in a bold circle or rectangle here. You can see them all over. So every block is numbered in the city, and each block has consecutively numbered lots, the smaller properties on them. These are known as tax maps. So if we were to zoom in on one of them, you can see block 335, block 336. So this one would be designated as block 335, lot number 5. And then you can see they have, if you were to zoom in on it, it has the dimensions written over here, how long and how wide the the property is. The developer also needs to consider in their subdivisions, selecting a street pattern. You know what? Let me get these into the notes. Lot and block numbers, street patterns.
Yeah, actually the electricity has gone off in my area.
It did? Yeah, I figured
Yeah.
something happened. You either lost your internet connection or electricity or something, yeah.
Yes, yeah, loss of internet, so connected to hotspot now.
Yeah, I remember in Edison, I had my office there previously, and that's that's why I got the notification from the mayor of Edison. You know, if you got a business there, they send out those notifications. But you can sign up for them, I think, on your city website too. And they'll give you you'll get those notifications from your mayor. That'll tell you that you know, when there's construction or there's an event that's going on that's going to cause traffic or something of that nature there. And emergencies, you know, they said, you know, flash flooding is possible, you know, stay in, don't go out. Only call 911 in the case of an emergency. You know, that's what he sent me that notification for your area. Because I used to have my business over there. So, but you could sign up for that notification system too, I think, on your city's website.
Okay.
Okay. I'm just updating my notes right now where we're at. Anything that you missed, you could get that caught up in the
Yeah.
by watching the video there. Yeah. So we pretty much just started this next chapter, chapter 18. All right.
And I see that it's gonna continue the whole night as well.
Is it supposed to go on all night long?
Especially Edison, all the way till like 2 a.m. We're gonna get thunderstorms with like 65, 50% this whole night.
Wow. All right, so we're gonna have a little thing. I guess I'm not gonna be able to cut my grass today. I mean, it is already pouring over here, but well, it looks like the sun is coming out. It may have passed for now. Well, you said it's gonna happen all night long?
All night, according to my weather on my phone.
Okay, well, I think part of those thunderstorm clouds just passed by me then. I guess we'll expect more. All right, so we've got the lot. The developer has to look into land planning for the street patterns, how they're going to lay out the streets in a subdivision, as well as the land planning. Are they going to go with the conventional garden estate for each individual property, or the clustered estates, where each property owner will have a smaller but it's planning for them to have more open space and parkland, as you can see in this picture here. So these are all things that the subdivider needs to take into consideration when planning their subdivisions. You know, the streets, the street patterns, the lot sizes, the layout of the lots. Are they planning for the larger lots or more open space and parkland? Ooh, that storm didn't go nowhere. I spoke too soon. I hear some more thunder rumbling on its way. All right. So you got the conventional garden estate on the left-hand side over here, and then you could see the clustered estates on the right, which they both have approximately the same housing. It's just that on the left, you got 1.6 acres of parkland in the conventional estates and about 23 and a half acres of parkland. So people are going to have much smaller lot sizes if you do that, though. But that's a decision that the developer, the land planner, the subdivider is going to have to decide. So here is a plat map of a very small subdivision. Maybe you own a large piece of property, and maybe you own a large piece of property and you want to turn that lot into several houses. You want to build several houses there. Okay, so here's an example of that on a plat map where you're going to build a cul-de-sac street here. And then, so you're going to build a cul-de-sac street here, and you can see the dimensions of your lot, the thick black line. And here's the public street where the dotted line is. And the red line, that is a road that you're going to build, a cul-de-sac street that you're going to build on your lot. And you can see there's lot number 1, lot number 2, lot number 3. You're subdividing it into 8 individual lots to build houses on. And then this is the cul-de-sac street. That's a street that has that big round end where cars, makes it easier for cars to turn around so they don't have to make K-turns. It's actually built like that mainly for fire trucks. So it's easier for garbage trucks and fire trucks to turn around. That's why they actually do it. And I got to get my snippet tool out so I could snap a picture of this thing. All right, dang, I got that. Okay, so plat is a map of a subdivision indicating the location and boundaries of each of the individual properties. It's also a legal description of land, one of the 3 legal descriptions of land that we're going to learn about in chapter 19. A map, a plat is a map of a subdivision indicating the location and boundaries of the individual properties.
I have to highlight already.
Yes, even I.
Oh, you already have the, okay. So land planning consists of the properties have to have their own covenants and restrictions, or they usually have them put in anyway. Restrictions that are placed in deeds by private parties, not by governments. And those restrictions that are placed in deeds are called restrictive covenants. The word covenant is a legal promise. So these are restrictive legal promises that that any owner of the property, future owner, has to agree to abide by. So land planning always precedes the actual subdivision process. And then we showed how they're going to have to lay out the land and all that. Now we're talking about the agreement of any covenants or restrictions that would be placed in those deeds. And government has their own powers. They don't put restrictions in your deeds. They've got their own powers, and we went over those government powers back in chapter 9. So estates and land that are based on restrictions, that have restrictions in them, are called fee determinable, defeasible fee, or conditional fee estates. We went over those in chapter 6. A moratorium is when the local government puts a halt to development in the area for whatever reason. It's important for a developer to record their permits and approvals that they get for their subdivision in the public records as soon as possible. Because in the event of a moratorium, they could continue their project even if they recorded their approvals. Otherwise, they cannot. So it's very important for a developer, as they get the approvals for their plans, to record them in the public record. So in the event that the municipality or the state or county calls a moratorium, a halt to any further development in the area, that won't apply to them because they already got their approvals and they got them recorded. If you did not record your approvals in the public record and they call a moratorium, you cannot start that construction project. The FHA has a minimum standard for new construction materials and occupancy requirements, which must be a majority of owner occupants if the complex is going to want to have people be able to get FHA loans to buy in them. So their construction standards need to be up to standard of FHA's minimum standards, and it has to be majority owner occupant owned, because owners take better care of their properties than renters. So they don't want people using FHA loans to buy a house in a complex that's mostly renter occupied, because the values may not get maintained as well because tenants don't care for properties as well as property owners generally. It ain't their property, they don't care, Development costs, here's a little factoid for you. Development costs are estimated to be 4 to 6 times the cost of the raw land itself to develop a subdivision. Little factoid there for you. And we'll go over in a moment what that consists of, what makes up that development costs. Now, density zoning is another term to add to your list there. So moratorium, you add to your list of words, as well as density zoning. This is zoning that restricts the maximum number of homes that can be built per acre, or zoning for the most homes that can be built per acre. It's another way of saying the same thing. I believe we went over that in an earlier chapter too, though. So remember, if you're going to get an FHA loan, it's the loan limits by county are set on the HUD website, as well as those condo complexes that are approved. They got a database there you could search. But if you have a condo complex, it's not HUD approved for FHA loans, you can always submit a package to get it approved. You're going to need to get information from the homeowners association and the owner and the mortgage company. And the mortgage rep will fill all that stuff out and get it for you, and then submit it to try to get the complex FHA approved. And approved for the next 20 years, once it is. All right, so, are we lose her again? Yep, okay, so let's do the highlights here and the notes.
And I finished.
Okay, got it? All right, so, the development cost, this is just a factoid, it's not on the exams for you. How do we factor in those development costs? What do those development costs consist of? Well, they got to take into consideration, let's see, in a subdivision, the typical parcel of land and lot sales price reflects expenses such as the cost of the land itself, installation of the sewers and septic systems, water mains and wells, storm drains, landscaping, street lights, the earthworks, that includes the mass dirt removal and site grading and similar operations. That site grading means, you're flattening out the ground if it's not level, paving, engineering, surveying fees, the real estate broker's commissions, inspections, building costs, filing and legal fees, the sale cost, as well as any other overhead they may have. Hey, remember the mansion tax? If they're building this big complex and that raw land cost $1 million or more, it's also, it's 1% tax, a mansion tax for the buyer that they need to pay. The builder's not going to be eating those costs. They're going to build it into the sale price of each individual property. And our governor recently just jacked that one up on his way out of office. He's jacked it up to 3.5%. I thought it was 3, but it's 3.5%. That mansion tax. Let me just double check and see if Google knows. Let me ask Google. Hey, Google. How much is New Jersey's mansion tax now?
$1 plus. The existing 1% mansion tax remains, but the responsibility shifts from the buyer to the seller, amending the 2004 law. $2 million plus, 2% tax on the seller. $2.5 million plus, 2.5% tax on the seller. $3 million plus, 3% tax on the seller.
Oh, I didn't know that part. That $1 million, if the property's $1 million or more, it was the buyer's responsibility to pay the mansion tax. The governor just raised that tax to 3%. However, he shifted the responsibility of the buyer from paying it to the seller.
So it's not the seller rather than the buyer.
So the seller's responsible for paying this. The seller already pays a realty transfer fee on the tax. That's a tax on the sale of your property. They call it the realty transfer fee. So let's see. Here's the info directly from New Jersey Realtors about the new tax will be paid entirely by the seller in the amounts of excess of $1 million plus. The existing 1% mansion tax remains, but the responsibility shifts from the buyer to the seller now, amending the 2004 law. If it's a $2 million plus, there's a 2% tax on the seller. 2.5 million plus is 2.5% tax on the seller. 3 million plus is a 3% tax on the seller. And the 3.5 million and above is a 3.5% tax on the seller. Oh, so he did raise it to 3.5. I knew I saw something about 3.5. Wow. So anyway, supporters over here, they say that this policy said that the increase makes sense at a time when housing costs and pricing many people out of the state. So as if that's going to lower the value of your property because they raise a tax. That sounds like an excuse to raise a tax rather than good reasoning. Why do we have that tax to begin with? That's the question that should be asked, in my opinion. You know, whatever happened to no tax without representation? Our politicians just keep creating these taxes for us, but we get no benefit or reward from it. What was that in history? How much was that tax at the Boston Tea Party that started the Revolutionary War?
Yeah, that's when tax started, based on tea.
Yeah, and which was that tax back then? What was it, a 1% tax? 0.5%? Whatever the hell it was?
Yeah, probably half of it, I think.
Yeah, it started a whole war. This guy, he snaps his fingers. He's like, we're going to tax the sale of your house up to 3.5% that the seller needs to pay. Well, what does that money go to? It goes to us, silly. For what? So we can spend it on stuff.
I was also hearing that New Jersey might actually become a swing state.
I tell you what, if Democrats in the state, these politicians in this state, keep on the course that they're at right now, I don't see how it can't. I mean, sane-minded Democrats, why would you keep voting for somebody who keeps raising the taxes? Look, Murphy was initially voted into office, and he said he's going to raise your taxes. And he even got in your face of the taxpayers of the state of New Jersey, and he said, if high taxes are a problem for you, maybe New Jersey's not the place for you.
Yeah, I do remember him saying that. Yeah.
And now he's creating or raising this. He created this mansion, or I don't know if it was in his administration or before that, but they created this mansion tax. Now he raised it along with a bunch of other taxes and created new ones on top of it. And now he's given the excuse, well, I'm raising the taxes now so that I could prevent people from leaving the state or to make the home more affordable. Because if people have to pay higher taxes when they sell their property, it's going to lower the values now. That is some warped thinking.
Yeah, and like when was it? My girlfriend took New Jersey Transit recently, and she got back from Jersey City, and like how they raised the fares, and then the antenna from the train came off right when the train landed to Metuchen train station, and the NJ Transit ticket collectors were like, is it me or did we lose power? And they were looking at the whole train, and they noticed that the
The
piece of
overhead that connects to the electric wires that runs the trains.
actually came off. And I was on the phone with my girlfriend, like, "Are you on this train or on the train behind this?" And she's like, "No, I'm on the train behind it." And I'm like, "So this is why New Jersey. I mean, if Governor Murphy is raising taxes and raising the fees for NJ Transit to have good trains and for these programs out there, then where's the money actually going?"
Good question. Nobody ever asks, where's the money going? You know why? Most people threw their hands up in the air and they just become cynical. They're like, "Oh, that's the way it is. Oh, that's government." They did the same thing in communist countries, in communism, All right, throw your hands up in the air. I've got no control over this. I'm not saying nothing. I'm not going to be thrown in prison for the rest of my life because I dared question our political leaders. You know, uh, that's that's the kind of power like our political leaders or elected representatives. They're not leaders. Political appointed voted representatives. I don't know why the taxpayers of the state keep voting for these same idiots into office that are telling you they're going to raise your taxes, and you don't want your taxes raised. A lot of people just continue voting the same way because of the letter that they have next to their name on a political ticket. They have a D or an R next to their name. Oh, we can't vote for Republicans. They got that R. We got to vote. Hey, we were always on Team Democrat, so we got to vote Team D. And despite the fact that they raise your taxes, raise your cost of living, this is the highest, most expensive place in the United States to live. That's insane. You'd figure Hawaii would be. New Jersey, highest tax rates, highest property taxes, some of the highest crime. Well, in certain areas. Okay, so you guys got these highlights down?
Yes.
These on and on.
I know.
Here, New Jersey environmental issues, problems with past use, such as of properties, such as soil contamination. Future buyers may face liability for cleanup under CERCLA, which we learned about in an earlier chapter, if you recall. EIS, these are environmental impact study reports, could have an impact on the project. They're required before any federal project that affects the quality of life, such as contamination, or requires info about planned project and possible solutions. Environmental impact, where you check for contamination, rare species, how it would affect traffic or noise pollution or what have you, drainage issues, etc. And if human remains are found on a property, well, now it just became a crime scene. And now we have to wait till the police come and the forensics determine whether this was a recent death, and then we have a crime on our hands, or if it's not, now we got to get the Historic Society to come in to now analyze the site and see if there's any historic significance to these bones we found on this property that we're digging up for a construction project. So could that halt your construction project and hamper it a bit? Yes, definitely. So did you guys ever hear about this? The ship that they found underneath the World Trade Center?
Yeah, I think in the beginning of class when we first started, you
I mentioned that.
yeah, we were going to real estate in Manhattan in that World Trade Center when they were digging deeper for a bigger, since it's gonna be a bigger building than what it is previously. They
Yeah.
have to dig deeper, and that's when they found the ship. Yeah.
Yep, that's it. That's the story. So yeah, that's definitely it.
Oh my.
So let's take a look. There, yeah, this was the I showed you this video.
The video, no.
Okay, I'm going to show you the video of this. Let me just take a couple of notes here, transfer them over, and then I'll show you the video. I'll play the video. So this definitely put a halt to the construction for a period of time in that area anyway. Around it, they could still do construction, but over here, it had to put a halt to the development in that area while the Historic Society came in and went through the rubble and trying to determine what was going on and what they found. So here.
With Plymouth Rock, I never wonder if I'm covered for home and auto.
More saving.
Yeah, well, it's a pretty significant find. It's the kind of thing that archaeologists are always hoping to find in landfill deposits. It's a ship. It was probably put here around in the early 1800s. We know that this area, this whole block, was filled in between about 1790s and the 1830s. So we figure the ship probably predates that and was used as part of the landfilling process. So they filled the ship with dirt and rocks, and in conjunction with timber cribbing features or landfill retaining structures on either side, sunk them to the bottom of the river and used it to create new land along the waterfront. At this point, we really don't know much. So we kind of just have to continue our analysis, see what's under the boat, what's in the dirt around it, and see if that can tell us anything. We're assuming it was placed here in the early 1800s based on historic maps and how they show us how the shoreline progressed. Basically, they would just sink it little by little and gradually extend the shoreline, and usually build new wharves and piers out into the river, leaving a slip in between so boats could continue to sail in and out. And then as waterfront land became more and more valuable and more necessary, they would continue filling in and extending the shoreline gradually. And it's tied into commerce and trade of the early 19th century. There have been ships found in the city before. There was a famous one on Water Street found in the early 1980s. And it's the kind of thing that everyone always hopes to find. It's an exciting find. It's a big find. It's something that's interesting. We can get a lot of information about it. It's a very unique part of history that, we wouldn't have access to otherwise.
Kind of crazy, huh? You can see the outline of the ship over here, the ship frame, that the wood wasn't all disintegrated and rotted already. Been there since the 1700s. They actually carbon dated the wood there, and they found that that ship was actually made of the same wood that the Liberty Bell was. So it came from the same region in New England where they found where they made that arch that the Liberty Bell is attached to. Yeah. But uses the same wood. So they dated it to the late 1700s. And actually, if you do a search online and you look up Discovery Channel, or what is it? National Geographic and Discover, and I think the Discovery, and then there's another one of those science-y channels, history channels. They actually did documentaries on this, and they show you all kinds of like pottery and money and jewelry and stuff that they found in the dirt around it, this ship that was sunk. But it's pretty amazing where the World Trade Center stood. You guys, have you ever been where the World Trade Center was?
I remember going when I was in high school. I do remember.
You see how far away from the shoreline that actually is?
Yeah.
Just imagine that right there used to be the waterfront. And all that other land that all those other buildings are on up until the water now, that's all man-made land. Where they sunk ships, they filled them with dirt and rocks and soil, and they built up the coastline. New York City, that's a peninsula, and it sticks out, and they built that up by creating new land. That used to all be water. They just extended the shoreline by doing this. It's kind of amazing.
And it's shrinking slowly.
But that could definitely have an impact on your construction project if they make a discovery like that, right? Whether it's human remains or some old guns and cannonballs and things of historic significance. You got to stop your construction, call the Historic Society, get them to come in, analyze this stuff. If it's human remains, you got to first call the police, let them investigate, see if it's a recent death or homicide or something, or if it's something of historic significance. So EIS, those are those environmental impact studies. You know, if you're going to be buying new construction, wouldn't you want to make sure that it wasn't built on contaminated soil? Yeah, so that's the whole idea of these EIS, environmental impact studies.
Yeah, that should be number one when you're trying to buy property.
Yeah, because look, previous use of land being considered for development should be carefully investigated at the outset. Chemical companies, dry cleaners, old farms with trash dumps or underground gas tanks, airports, warehouses, gas stations, factories of all sorts have produced potentially dangerous chemical wastes. And these problems may be faced by unaware future property owners, that they may be liable to the cleanup. If they end up building new construction on there, you buy that new construction later to find out that it was built on contaminated land. That's like Staten Island. If you own a house in Staten Island, just about all of Staten Island was a city dump. And they talk about dirty Jersey. Staten Island was a dump. It was literally a garbage dump. They just covered it in layers and layers of soil and dirt and put the tubes in the ground so that the gases from the decomposing crap in the ground can escape. And they built new houses on them. So most of Staten Island was built on a dump. And they call us dirty Jersey because they drive through that little bit of an old industrial area that kind of stinks. You know? People in glass houses, right? Shouldn't throw stones. So New Jersey's environmental regulations, before any construction can take place in an environmentally sensitive area, we've gone over this one once before too, you got to first get permission from the DEP. The New Jersey DEP regulates environmentally protected areas. So before any construction or development can take place in these environmentally sensitive areas, who regulates them? The DEP, that's the New Jersey Department of Environmental Protection, not the EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, that's the federal agency, but the DEP, that's the New Jersey Environmental Agency. So there's a guide that they have made called Buy Bob. Before you buy, before you build. Before any construction can take place in these regulated areas, builders need to check these guides. Before you buy, before you build. Buy Bob. Before they do any construction, it'll tell you if these are in areas that are regulated by the DEP or not. So in the Wetlands Protection Act of 1970 gave the DEP the authority to regulate those areas. In the Highlands of New Jersey, it's the Highlands Water Protection Act. In the Pinelands, it's the Pinelands Protection Act. Pinelands, or some people call it the Pine Barrens. CAFRA is the Coastal Area Facility Review Act that gives the DEP the authority to regulate those areas. And then we have the Waterfront Development Act as well. So this guide by Bob is a guide for builders or anybody who's doing construction in areas. They should consult this guide first to see if regulation, if the area is regulated by the DEP, and they need to get permission from them before they build. That's by Bob. So here, I'll share that guide with you if you like. By Bob, before you buy, before you build. So these are just those different areas. You know, the Highlands Water Protection and Planning Act protects New Jersey's drinking water when paving over 1 acre or more of land in the highlands areas. The New Jersey Pinelands Protection Act regulates 22% of the state's land area, known as the Pine Barrens, the Pinelands National Reserve. The Wetlands Act requires a permit before you do any excavation or fill or building on certain areas. It covers both coastal areas as well as inland freshwater areas. It even covers areas where water hasn't even seen, if those areas are meant for water runoff. That was something that President Obama did, you know. Now, what does President Obama have to do with New Jersey? Well, these areas are regulated by the EPA, the federal agency. But anytime that there's a state agency that covers these things, they pass on some of that authority to those state environmental agencies to help with the regulations and cleanups of these areas. So when he expanded the EPA's reach, they greatly overstretched their authority. They went as far as trying to kick people off of lands where they had their cattle grazing, because there was a turtle, a desert turtle or something there, and they could disturb their habitation. In the meantime, this family has been having their cattle grazing these lands since before we became a country. And the environmental agency went out there with guns ablazing to try to force them off the land. And they ended up shooting and killing their father. And then arrested the adult kids that were the cattle hands there. And they threw them in jail. That was under the Obama administration. He thought that was perfectly fine and reasonable. And then he labeled them as domestic terrorists, those farmers. How dare they try to stand up to our governmental agency, the EPA, to protect the lands, you know? And then later on, the Supreme Court ended up ruling several years later, not until Trump was president. So that was several years later. The Supreme Court then ruled that the EPA overstepped, and the court issued an apology, and then released immediately those the kids from prison. Huh? Our bad. Sorry for killing your dad. Who's regulating the regulators, right? And then we got the Coastal Area Facility Review Act, CAFRA, clustering for open space and planned unit developments. They regulate those things. Waterfront Development Act regulates areas outside of CAFRA, the Coastal Area Facility Review Act. The DEP must approve plans for waterfront developments on any navigable water or stream. After Sandy, FEMA redrew those flood maps a bit. And that's, Obama also made it so that areas that normally don't see water, they're just meant for, like, when there's huge floods, to be runoff. Those areas are regulated just as if they're a waterway by the EPA or the New Jersey DEP. So if a farmer has a big enough puddle on their land, it could be determined that it is a waterway that is under the control of the EPA, and they could regulate it. Yes. Sounds kind of ridiculous, doesn't it? But these are actually rules, and Obama passed them. And he gave that additional authority to the EPA. And a lot of it has been fought in courts and overturned. But some of it's still in place as rules we need to follow. So, speaking of rules to follow, Interstate Land Sales Full Disclosure Act. These rules are intended to protect the public from unscrupulous developers and marketers from undue sales pressure, like with timeshare sales. Buyers have 7 calendar days to cancel the contract for the purchase or lease of such lands. We know that already. We learned about that. Advertisements for new construction of out-of-state properties that are marketed to New Jersey, in New Jersey, and large in-state subdivisions with 100 lots or more, or those with common area elements with at least 10 units, stipulate that all contracts and disclosures must be available in the same language that the property is advertised in. So here's the law. Anytime you market a property for sale, all the contracts and disclosures for that property must be available in the same language that you advertised it in. You cannot do the translation, even if you're multilingual. This must be done by somebody who's a professional translator that is familiar with legal terminology and the law. Because some words in languages have separate legalese meanings to them. So we got to make sure that when these documents are translated, that they translate properly. Okay. So this language requirement applies to all properties advertised in New Jersey, not just new ones, from both in as well as out-of-state projects. So any property that is advertised in the state of New Jersey must have all the contracts and disclosures available in the same language that the property was advertised in. And I think you're going to get an exam question on that. Okay.
Okay.
So let's do the highlights for that on page 345 and 346. And then right above the word properties, because they're talking about addressing non-New Jersey properties, but it deals with all properties. So just write the word all above properties and then highlight the rest of that. Now, the out-of-state properties and in-state construction deals only with new construction. But pertaining to properties advertised in languages other than English, subsequent forms must be available to all prospective purchasers in the same language that was used in the original advertisement. That's because this particular law is pertaining to only new construction. But there are other laws that pertain to it. So whether it's new construction or not, all properties advertised in a language other than English must have contracts and disclosures available in the same language that it was advertised.
And I'm good.
Okay,
Yes.
I'm good as well.
okie dokie. Just realized that I have some duplicate notes here, so I'm just deleting them. So here we go. Interstate Land Sales Full Disclosure Act. They show you here on page 346. This is for the subdivided lands, new construction for plant condominiums, cooperatives, and PUDs, planned unit developments, and townhouse developments. If the subdivision has 100 lots or with homeowners association, so it could be less than 100 lots. The Plain Real Estate Development Act sets similar requirements to those in the Real Estate Sales Full Disclosure Act. So if a New Jersey subdivision falls within the requirements of the act, the buyer has the right to cancel a contract within 7 calendar days. The registration and disclosure requirement applies to new original offerings, not to single resales. So that's for new construction, that they could cancel the purchase within 7 days, only for new construction. Okay.
Yes.
So
I'm good.
you need some? You need more time?
No, I have the highlights. I have them.
Okay. So the UCC, the Uniform Construction Code, different from the last chapter where we went over the Uniform Commercial Code, which regulated the sale of businesses. The Uniform Construction Code is the state's minimum standard for construction. So the database of all the building and construction standards, which is maintained and enforced by the DCA, the Department of Community Affairs down in Trenton. They regulate construction, alteration, renovation, occupancy, and use of all buildings if your municipality doesn't have its own building code enforcement officials. Either way, the DCA inspects buildings and public buildings and schools, commercial properties like large shopping centers and buildings with 3 or more rental units, not counting the unit the landlord lives in. The state inspections will always handle these properties. So just write the state's minimum standard for construction. It's the Uniform Commercial Construction Code, UCC. And then right here, a little factoid that's good to know.
And I have the highlights already.
Okay.
Yeah, even me.
So the new Warranty and Builders Registration Act. This basically says that all new construction comes with a 10-year builder's warranty. It's required by New Jersey law. So before the construction can get the CO, the builder needs to register a new home warranty and pay for that new home warranty with the Department of Community Affairs in Trenton. So basically, they're buying the new warranty through the state. And that's a 10-year new construction builder's warranty. It's only good for certain time frames, like for various periods of time. So this the new Builders and Warranty and Builders Registration Act requires that all builders of new homes have to register a warranty against new home warranty defects for up to 10 years. It's a 10-year new home warranty. The builder purchases it and registers it with the DCA, the Department of Community Affairs in Trenton, so they have a copy of it on file there. So it is passable from the original purchaser of the property. They could pass it on and use that warranty as well, because it's good for 10 years and it transfers with the owners as well. It's a 10-year warranty for varying periods. You know, it could be like for the first year, everything is covered. After up to year 3, then after year 3, the major appliances like the HVAC system are no longer covered. And so that's what they mean for varying periods of time. It's for up to 10 years for varying periods. That's what that means. It is a 10-year warranty. But for varying periods, different things are covered for different periods of time. That's what they mean by against new home defects for varying periods of up to 10 years. But the warranty itself is a 10-year warranty. There, you guys highlighted that. You'll need to know that that will always be on exams.
Yeah, I have it.
So enforcement, if there's no local building code enforcement inspectors, the state does conduct the inspections with their own inspectors from the DCA. And those guys eat, breathe, sleep the building codes. So, I mean, it could be new construction, they'll find things wrong with it. Trust me on this. I got a friend who's an inspector for the DCA. Construction permits must be issued before any construction, alteration, demolition, or change of use or occupancy of a building can be undertaken. So how do construction permits work? Well, the UCC, the Uniform Construction Code, requires a construction permit before any construction, alteration, demolition, or change of use of the building can be undertaken. Applicants must provide information like the location of the property, construction plans, estimated cost of the work, names and addresses of the owners and designated contractors that are to do the work. Local construction officials then must inspect the application and the property to determine whether it conforms with the requirements of those building codes. And then within 20 days, they must either approve the plans and issue a permit or reject it in writing with the cause for the rejection. If rejected, the applicant may revise the plans to meet the requirements or appeal the rejection to the Construction Board of Appeals. Now, once issued, the construction permit may be revoked if it contains any false or misleading information or omissions, or if the construction is not started within 12 months of the issuing of the permit, or if it's suspended for 3 months or longer after the work has begun. So a lot of people get confused about how building permits work, especially since a lot of towns don't abide by the rules that they're supposed to be abiding by. Yeah, that can make it difficult. Now, you could submit some plans for electrical work and some plumbing work and this and that, some framing that you had done, and you submit all these permits to the municipality to get the approvals for them and to get the inspections. And what the municipality does is they say, oh, well, we got 20 days. You submitted 3 approvals for different things. So, you know, we got up to 20 days with this department, and then they'll give the package to the other department, and then they got another 20 days, and then we'll give it to that department, and they got another 20 days. No, that's not the way it works. You paid for those permits for each and every one of those permits separately. You filed for each and every one of those permits, and you just handed them all in at the same time. They don't go to one department before they get passed on to the next, so you got to wait 60 days. You got 20 days for each department. Municipalities sometimes either screw with the homeowners or people that are doing their construction projects, or they just don't know the rules themselves on how it's supposed to work. So it helps if you guys know, then you can guide your clients. All right, so let's just write the word building codes after under the enforcement section there, page 347. And then highlight the Uniform Construction Code requires a construction permit be issued before any construction, alteration, demolition, or change of use. So anytime we sell a property, it requires a CO as well. However, it's a little bit different. Some municipalities call it a CCO. So if you didn't do any construction, you're just changing the occupancy. They may not call it a CO, but they could call it a CCO, continued certificate of occupancy. And if it's existing structure that just had some work done to it, some remodeling, they may call the permit a certificate of compliance, that it's continually still complying with the code. So some municipalities get all anal about what you call it. You know, for new construction, it's a CO, certificate of occupancy. For an existing structure that's modified that you did some work on, it's a certificate of compliance. And for homes that you didn't do any construction on, but you're changing the, you're changing the ownership, well, you still need to get an inspection, and that's called a CCO, a continued certificate of occupancy. And then again, there's a lot of municipalities that don't play that game. They're just like, hey, it's all a certificate of occupancy. We just call them all those inspections, we call them certificate of occupancy. So it depends on the municipality. All right, so there you go. That's the breakdown of what I was talking about. And you could do those highlights on page 347 and 348. I'm in the process of getting a certificate of occupancy right now for one of my, for that listing I have that we have under contract.
And I have the highlights.
Okie dokie.
Yes.
Look at that. I guess you should. There you go. That'll fit. All right, so the building for the smoke detectors, fire detectors, all that stuff. The building and safety code requirements state that smoke detectors have to be on each level of the building and within 10 feet of any sleeping quarters. So they're very specific about where they need to be. On every floor and within 10 feet of any sleeping quarters. Carbon monoxide detectors have to have that 10-year sealed non-replaceable battery as of the law change in 2019. And homes built after 1978 require hardwired detectors. Most municipalities require one in each level, as well as hardwired with battery backups if your home was built after 1978. Fire extinguishers must be mounted in kitchens within 10 feet of them using the hardware they came with. And they have to be rated to put out ABC type fires and must be under 10 pounds so that they can easily be handled. However, as of this year, March 2025, our outgoing mayor suddenly just canceled that. They just changed that law. So it's no longer required by state law, but your local fire enforcement officials may still require them for inspection. So you got to check with whatever your local municipal ordinances are. State law no longer requires it, but your local fire department may. Why did that ever become a law? We're going to see on the next slide. Once you guys take the highlights down and put this down here. Yeah. It says, at least one properly installed carbon monoxide detector, It has to have a 10-year sealed battery, write that under that. And where it says fire extinguishers, write type ABC under 10 pounds. You really need, state law no longer requires them, but your local municipalities may.
All right, I have it.
Yeah, even me.
All right. Oh. See if I added that to the notes. As of May 23, there we go. I like that. All right, so that New Jersey law that required the fire extinguishers went into effect in 2025. After Governor McGreevey, he bowed out of the governorship in disgrace after he got caught cheating on his wife with some guy. So remember he quit the governorship, and then acting governor Richard Cody took his place. And at the time, there was a rash of fires that we saw in the news in kitchens where children were reaching up on when the pot handles were sticking out. This is why we tell everybody, all the parents, make sure the pot handles aren't sticking out, because little children, they're curious. They reach up. What is mommy doing? They reach up and they pull a pan down, and a pan full of grease that they're cooking with could fall on them and catch fire. And there was a rash of incidences where this happened. And if you're the parent over there and you're in the kitchen and you got a water sitting there in a sink in a pot or pan or a cup, the immediate reaction is to throw water on a fire to try to help extinguish your child that's burning in front of you. But that's the worst thing you could do to a grease fire. You ever throw water on a grease fire or a pan that has grease and see what happens? How it goes, it gets really inflamed, right? So
Yeah.
this is the worst thing you could do. If your child's on fire, you actually make it even worse. You spread the fire. So this law came about because they were doing fire prevention and safety programs in schools, and acting governor Richard Cody was in a school, and a fifth grader suggested to him, why don't you just pass a law that requires you to have fire extinguishers in the kitchen? Duh! It took a fifth grader to come up with this idea, but then they passed a law. So he signed a Senate bill 1294 as of July 1st, 2005, that every dwelling unit located in a building with fewer than 3 dwelling units, upon its sale, lease, or transfer, shall be equipped with at least one portable fire extinguisher. It had to be rated to put out ABC type fires and no larger than 10 pounds so that you could easily manage to grab it and quickly respond. So, what is these ratings, ABC? A is rated to put out trash, wood, paper fires. B is liquids, gases, and solvents. And C is for electrical fires. I mean, I don't know why this governor just suddenly canceled that. It was put in place for a good reason. But by the way, it's not the law anymore. But your local municipality, your local fire inspector may still require it. So just keep in mind. I'm going to actually write that on this slide just so that everybody's aware that is no longer a requirement. But your local fire enforcement code official may want it still. So no longer a requirement in New Jersey, but check local fire your local fire official may still require. All righty. Hotel, motel, multiple health and safety law enacted to ensure that residents of New Jersey have a decent standard and safe units of dwelling space to live in. State inspections are often referred to as green card inspections. That's the industry lingo. It must be performed at least once every 5 years, and it applies to buildings with 3 or more rental units, not counting the one that the owner lives in. And hotels and motels that have 10 or more units of dwelling space or sleeping facilities for 25 or more people have to be inspected at least once every 3 years, and those inspections could be spot inspections that are unannounced. So let's highlight that.
I have it.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
you need a second?
Yes.
Okay. Let me know when you're done.
Yes, done.
Okay. That's it. Chapter 18 is done. Let's do the key terms to review, and we are done here. So, charges to developers for extra roads, schools, and so forth. What do we call those charges that are given that developers are charged with for building extra roads, schools, and so forth to handle the additional burden of any development that they do? This is page 350. Charges to developers for extra roads, schools, and so forth. Now, you don't got to go going through the pages. If you don't know it, I'll tell you. You know, it's fees. 7 is
Just
A.
the name.
Huh? Yeah, impact.
To remember
Impact.
Yeah. So to help with the impact that this development will have on the local community. So 7A, impact fees. What do we call a test of the soil's absorption and drainage capacity?
the perk
The perk test. You just say
Yeah.
perk test. Perk test, percolation test. 10 is B. Division of property into more than one building lot. What do you call it when you divide one property into more than one?
Subdivision.
Subdivision, 16 is C. Community with dense zoning and developers plan for the entire land use.
Community with dense zoning.
Community with dense zoning and the developers plan for entire land use.
Density zoning.
It's a planned unit development. 12 is D. A group setting standards for local subdivisions. Any subdivision in town. For any construction in town, for that matter, too. Well, actually, for ones anyway.
Planning board? No.
All part of the planning board. The planning board makes those. They got to review those plans before they approve them. 13 is E. A halt to development in the area. What is that called? A halt to any development in the area.
Isn't it plat? No.
Moratorium.
Yes, it's a moratorium. 9 is F. New Jersey standard for building. What's New Jersey's standard for building?
Uniform Construction Code?
Yes, 17 is G, the Uniform Construction Code. The U.S. requirement for some developments to be registered with the CFPB, the Consumer Financial Protection Bureau. So what is that United States requirement for some developments to be registered with CFPB?
Yes. Environmental impacts? No.
No. That's the Interstate Land Sales Full Disclosure Act. Interstate. So that's right. I'll hit there. The United States requirement for some developments to be registered. So that's the Interstate Land Sales Full Disclosure Act. 8 is H. State regulations for builders of new homes.
Warranty and builders registration.
Yep, Warranty and Builders Registration Act, 18 is I. Permits buyers up to 7 calendar days to cancel contracts for the lease or purchase of such lands. What requires you to back out of that contract within 7 days? It's the Real Estate Sales Full Disclosure Act. 15 is J. A law requiring registration of certain developments within New Jersey.
Planned Real Estate Development Act?
Yep. 11 is K. Zoning that allows more living units per acre than usual.
Borough Subdivided Land Sales Control?
No, zoning. Zoning that allows more living units together, closer together than normal.
Density zoning.
Density zoning, 5 is L. A map of a town, section, or subdivision. What do we call that map?
Oh,
Plat.
A plot, yes.
yeah.
14 is M. It's a plat map. 14 is M. New Jersey state agency that approves and registers some out-of-state property. This is actually a division within the Real Estate Commission.
Borough of Subdivided Land Sales Control?
The Bureau of Subdivided Land Sales Control. 1 is N. Local municipalities authorization for building plans.
Construction
Permits.
Yes, 3 is O, construction permit. Engineering reports often required before building permits are issued.
Dedication?
No, what do we call that? Engineering report.
Environmental Impact Statement?
Yes, the EIA. 6 is P. Turning over private property, subdivision, streets to a municipality. Well, what do we call that when you turn over, when you give land to the government for public use, like streets, schools, and parks?
Dedication.
4 is Q, dedication. Putting living units close together to leave more open space.
And that's clustering.
Clustering. 2 is R.
Yeah.
There you go. And that concludes chapter 18.